Alright, hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing like a little tier list for the killers in Dead by Daylight, but I want to clear something up really quick. Even though I'm going to be making this killer tier list, I don't want you to think that these are the killers that I think are like the most overpowered or most underpowered. I'm making this tier list based off of how much I enjoy playing these killers. So when you end up watching this video, don't like take my words as like me meaning that certain killers are more OP than others. On a side note, I also don't particularly hate playing any of the killers. So any killer that I may or may not end up putting in the F tier, it doesn't actually have to do with anything about their playstyle or anything like that. It's just that they don't really appeal to me as much as the others, and I don't want to have every single killer sitting in between the S and B tiers. Alright, crappy intro out of the way, let's get started. So I'll work my way down the line that's presented here. And we'll start with Trapper. Trapper, to me, in terms of being fun, Trapper is a very A tier killer for me. I do like the idea that you get to place bear traps around the map in convenient and funny little places that'll catch survivors off guard. I like the idea of prepping for chases, and that's something that Trapper has that I don't really think other killers can really put up much of a fight with. I like Trapper because he's simple, he's not over the top with his ability, and if I ever want to play a game where I want to use my brain more than like looping skills, I do prefer Trapper over most other killers. So that's why he's going to be going in the A tier for me. He's not the most fun as some of the S tier killers I'll be putting up here, but he's definitely really high up there. Next up is Wraith, and I'm going to be putting Wraith in the C tier. Now, back when I first started playing this game, Wraith was like my boy. Like, I played Wraith all the time. Like, my first 50 hours that I spent playing killer, I pretty much exclusively played Wraith at low ranks because I liked the idea of using his power to go invisible and sneak up on unsuspecting survivors. And it also helped that his base perks, his teachables, were really good for finding survivors that were like trying to hide a lot, because most low rank survivors tend to play pretty immersed. However, as I started playing the game more often, Wraith's kind of like shortcomings started to become more apparent to me. He's not good against flashlight squads, he's not good at ending chases quickly. He's more of a hit and run killer, and that works sometimes, but it doesn't always end up being a fun experience for you because sometimes survivors are just too good. So he's still fun to me, but he's not like, I don't prioritize him as much as other killers. Next up on my tier list is Hillbilly, and I'm going to be putting him in the A tier. Hillbilly is a really fun killer to me because I like the idea of being able to rush down survivors with a skill-based weapon and instantly down them as a reward. I like the rewarding feeling that you get when you hit someone with Hillbilly's chainsaw. To me, he's also probably one of the best farming killers because you have a lot of options when it comes to getting as many blood points as possible. You can equip barbecue and chili, you can equip speed limiter so you get to hit survivors more often with your chainsaw and build up more blood points. And even if survivors escape, as long as you got like a ton of hook states and a ton of blood points, then it's really not much of a big deal. I also like Hillbilly's cosmetics, which I unfortunately don't have, but I'm a big fan of. Alright, next up is the Nurse. Nurse, to me, is B tier. I understand that Nurse is probably the best killer in the game, and I do enjoy playing her a decent amount, but sometimes it's just, I feel like I'm too sweaty when I play her. Like, I enjoy playing her. I love the ability to ignore pallets and get to survivors quickly and unexpectedly, but if you're playing against really sweaty survivors, it can be really difficult to play as Nurse, and I'm not the best Nurse. I'm not going to say I'm the worst, but I do enjoy playing her. But that's probably why she's at B tier instead of A tier for me. Like, if I had to choose between playing Trapper and Nurse, like on a daily basis, I think about 7 out of 10 times I would choose Trapper over Nurse. She's not bad, I just don't enjoy her as much as some of the other killers. Michael is going to go for me in the B tier. I enjoy playing Michael Myers a pretty decent amount. He was actually the second killer I ever purchased in the game as DLC. I loved the idea of being able to stalk survivors and really get a knowledge of where they are from like long distances, because if you stalk when you're like up on a rock or something, you can see them even if they're trying to hide because they have like a white aura, and that was really helpful for me when I first started playing the game. I also like the idea that you can like level up your power as the match progresses until you get to the point where you get tier 3 Myers and you just become a freaking beast. Your terror radius explodes, your vaulting speed becomes fast, your lunge distance is way higher. Like, you become a terror, and it's actually kind of one of the scariest things in the game is a tier 3 Myers, in my opinion. I also really enjoy playing infinite tier 3 Myers. It just seems like it's cheating to me, honestly, but I still really enjoy it. Now, Myers isn't as fun to me as some of the other killers because Like I said, it can be really stressful playing as him because you have to stalk people pretty early on or else they'll blow through the generators and they'll just escape before you can even tier 3 them. But in the games where his power works, it really works, and that's why it's fun. But Michael's gonna go in the B tier for me. Next up is the Hag, and I find the Hag to be a B tier killer. When I first started playing this game and I was kind of trying to figure out what killers I wanted to purchase before others, Hag was one of the ones that I was thinking of. I like the idea that you could put traps on the ground that would allow you to teleport to survivors. I thought that would give her really good map pressure when I first started playing the game, but I didn't know that her teleport distance had a limited range, so it kind of caused me to fall off the bandwagon with her. I also started to learn that she's kind of a campy killer. Not very fun for survivors to play against because there's not really a lot of counterplay other than having like a flashlight. And as a result, whenever I do play Hag, I try my best not to hook camp with the freaking traps. But honestly, I think she's still a pretty fun killer. She's not very chase oriented. I don't like having to chase survivors for long periods of time. It also helps that she's a medium height killer, so you can kind of mind game certain pallets, which is always a plus. So that's why she's going to go on the B tier for me. I like playing her, but she's not like my prioritized most favorite killer. Next up is Doctor, and Doctor for me is going to go in the D tier. I don't really have a lot of experience with Doctor, but anytime I play him, there's just something off about him that I don't really enjoy playing. I like using his static blast to find survivors that are trying to hide, that's actually really helpful. But I don't like the idea that you have to try to shock survivors into not being able to drop pallets or vault through windows. Doctor's power just doesn't really hit that, the dopamine levels, you know? I don't know how to describe it. His appearance is unappealing, his power is not that interesting to me. I just don't play him that much. I can play him a couple times before I get kind of annoyed with his chase music, because, quite frankly, I think it's the worst thing in the game. So that's why he's going to go in the D tier. Next up is Huntress, and Huntress is going to go for me in the A tier. Huntress is one of my favorite killers because I like the skill level that you have to have when using her power. If a Huntress tries to throw a hatchet at you from across the map, 9 times out of 10 it's gonna miss. But it's always interesting when it does get a little bit closer to you each time. And that's kind of where the fun lies in using Huntress's power, is getting those really awesome trick shots with your Huntress hatchets. I also just like the idea of having a smaller terror radius and being a little more undetectable compared to other killers. I know you still have your lullaby that can be heard from the distance, but that doesn't have any directional value. At least it doesn't tell you very easily how close she is. And I also think that helps with sneaking up on survivors, and I like the fact that she requires a bit of skill to play, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to just wreck people. You're gonna have games where you're gonna occasionally lose as her, but then you'll have other games where you'll really be landing your hatchets, and that just hits the spot. So that's why she goes in the A tier for me. Next up is Bubba, or the Cannibal, and Bubba for me is a D tier killer just because his power to me doesn't have enough depth. I know people love playing Bubba, and I don't hate anybody for liking Bubba, but I have too much PTSD with this character because he's kind of the best in the game for camping hooks. I'm not saying all Bubbas do it, but when Bubbas do it, it's not the most fun thing to play against. So that's why I kind of have a bit of trouble playing as this killer. It's just, I don't like the idea that he doesn't have a movement speed ability, he doesn't have any tracking abilities, he just has his chainsaw. And even though it helps him in chases pretty well, it's just not enough for me, you know? I just don't really play this killer unless I want to turn my brain off and not really have to ultra try hard. I'm not saying that he doesn't take skill, but I'm just saying his power just doesn't have enough depth for my liking. But that's why he goes in the D tier. Alright, next up is Freddy Krueger, and this is probably going to be my most biased opinion, but I'm putting Freddy Krueger in the F tier. I do not like playing this killer that much. I would choose Doctor or freaking Cannibal over this guy because he feels too powerful to me. I don't like playing him because I don't like the idea of being able to hook a survivor, then teleport to a generator and kick it with Pop Goes the Weasel because you have the ability to see someone from far away with the perk barbecue and chili. That's the only 2 perks that anyone ever brings on this killer. It's super irritating, and I hate how it's the only thing that kind of works with him. You can try teleporting to generators without barbecue and chili, but if you don't know where survivors are, there's a chance you'll teleport to a generator that has 0 progress, and you'll lose all your pressure. I don't like how his playstyle kind of revolves around those 2 perks, and as a result, I rarely play this killer, if at all. The only time I play him is if I'm in the mood to play licensed killers, because I'm actually a pretty big fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. But other than that, I'm not really interested in this killer. Next up is the Pig, and I'm going to be putting Pig in the A tier. Pig is the first killer I ever purchased when I played Dead by Daylight. I just love the idea of being able to kind of mess with survivors' heads and make it so you kind of like are playing your own little game inside of Dead by Daylight. You kind of get to like torture and punish survivors in a way by being able to put traps on their head that'll explode over time. And Pig has some of the best map pressure in the game just by the fact that if she can get her chases done quickly and down people early game, she's able to slow down the generators by such a large amount that it can be ridiculous. And I love that aspect of it. I don't like the fact that her traps are RNG based. Like, there will be times where you could literally trap all 4 survivors and they all go to a macabre box and they all just pop their freaking helmet off immediately, and that's not fun. But I do like the idea of you have to perform well early on or else you're gonna suffer, and even then you still might have a chance of pulling it back. So that's why I'm putting Pig in the A tier. Next up is Clown, and I'm going to be putting Clown in the B tier. Clown for me is one of those killers that I didn't really have much interest in. I didn't think that his power was all that like game breaking, because I would play Survivor and I would just run around to a pallet, drop the pallet early, he'd break the pallet and I'd run away. Like, that's all it is to deal with Clown. Like, he might try to throw his bottles, he might try to slow you down, but as long as you just get to a pallet and just drop it early, there's not much he can do about it because he can't really affect your pallet vaulting speed. But when his rework came out and he got access to his yellow bottle, I kind of thought that that was really cool, to the point where I wanted to play him more. Now, I'll admit his yellow bottle isn't the most like amazing buff in the world, but I do have uses for it where I have been able to use it to catch survivors quickly. As a result, I didn't really think much of him before his yellow bottle, the antidote, came out, but now that he's a little bit more playable, I'm putting him in the B tier. I think he's pretty fun. He's not like I have to play him all the time fun, but I do enjoy playing Clown. Next up is Spirit, and I'm going to be putting Spirit in the D tier. When I play Spirit, I just have trouble playing her. There are so many problems with her that I notice while playing her that they're so glaring compared to other killers. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm able to notice her lowered movement speed more than any other slow killer in the game. Like, I'll play Huntress or I'll play Deathslinger, and I'll hardly notice that I'm slightly slower than other killers. But when I play Spirit, I'm like, oh my god, it is taking me forever to catch up to survivors. And then when I try to use her power, most of the time it works out pretty well, but then sometimes I just can't help but think if I had been playing any other killer, then that survivor would have gotten away, you know? I'm not a fan of Spirit's power in the sense that it can be kind of annoying to play against her, and Rancor is still one of the most annoying perks in the game in my opinion. And when I know that the survivors are having almost no fun compared to me when I'm playing a killer, it kind of messes with my own interpretation of the game. As a result, I rarely play Spirit, but when I do, I try to have some fun with her. I don't tunnel, I don't camp, I don't freaking phase walk after I just immediately injured a survivor. I try to use it to be a little more mind gamey. So that's why I'm going to put her in the D tier. Alright, we're about halfway done here, so let's keep working. Next up is Legion. I'm going to be putting Legion in the C tier. Legion to me is one of those killers that is probably really fun to play as when you're playing killer, but playing against, he's not the most fun. He has almost no chase interaction, he only wants to chase you if you're injured, and I see a lot of Legion players run the Thanatophobia, Dying Light, Ruin trick where they try to make it so the game takes 45 minutes. I don't really like doing that as Legion, and as a result, I kind of just play him as like a hit and run killer that'll occasionally take chases if he knows that the survivor will be in like an opportunistic place where he can get an easy hit. I play Legion rarely because I don't like the fact that his power relies on not chasing people. Like, you actually go out of your way to not chase people. Like, I don't think that that's probably the most fun aspect of the game, is being able to get into chases between the killer and the survivor. And the fact that there's a killer that kind of negates that makes him kind of unfun. Now, having said that, the reason why I don't put Legion in like the D or F tier is because I do still like his aesthetic. I like the fact that he's a knife-wielding teenage angsty teen that wants to stab all of his problems away. I also like the fact that his power gives you a lot of information that you would need to catch survivors when they're trying to get generators done. So even though he's kind of annoying to play against, I still do occasionally enjoy him, so that's why he's going in the C tier. Next up is Plague, and I'm going to be putting Plague in the C tier kind of like for the same reasons Legion does. When you're playing as Plague, all you kind of want to do is walk around, get people sick. You don't even really chase them that much. It's like a game of tag. It's like, haha, I got you with my sickness. Now it's time to walk around and try to find someone else to get them sick. Now, the reason I'm not putting Legion or Plague in the D or F tier is because I love her corrupt purge power. I love the idea of having a like upgraded power, kind of like the same reason I put Myers pretty high up there. However, her corrupt purge is very irritating to try to aim. Maybe I just don't have the best practice with it, but when I play as her and I try to use my corrupt purge power from a distance, it can be kind of irritating when I watch like the freaking power goes right through someone and it doesn't hit them anyways. Even when it is missing, there will be occasions where her power allows me to really like snowball. Like you down a survivor, you hook them, then you go and down another survivor, and then there's a survivor next to that one, and then you down them with your corrupt purge. Like the snowballing potential is really awesome, and it can really turn games around. So that's why I'll put her in the C tier. Next up for the killer tier list is going to be Ghostface. Ghostface for me is an A tier killer in terms of how fun he is. I like Ghostface because I like the idea of being a smaller, kind of more undetectable killer that's able to stealthily move around the map and stalk survivors and take them down one by one. Because of his power being that he is able to reduce his terror radius to 0 and get rid of his red stain, you can also use it in chases to try to mind game pallets in certain window vaults, and I also think that that's pretty cool. Because you can use his power in chases and when you're trying to get easy kills on survivors that are not suspecting you, I put him in A tier because I like the ability to alternate between those two playstyles to fit my needs. Next up is Demogorgon, and I'm going to tell you right now that you probably won't be surprised, but I'm going to put Demogorgon in the S tier. Now, why do I put Demogorgon in the S tier? Well, when I first heard that the Stranger Things chapter was coming out, I was pretty excited. I'm a pretty big fan of Stranger Things. I can't wait until they hopefully do another season or maybe like a spin-off series about some of the characters. So that's kind of a reason why I'm kind of biased towards this killer to begin with. When I saw his power and I saw the ability of like his lunge attacks and his portals, I was pretty like encapsulated by that. I like his lunge attack, his shred, because it allows you to catch up to survivors in situations where they would have normally been able to get to a pallet and stun you. One of the things that irritates me most when I'm playing this game is when I'm trying to like catch up to a survivor and I'm just barely too slow and they get to a pallet and they stun me with it as I'm attacking them. It's like the worst feeling in the world for me. Demogorgon pretty much negates that. If you shred them before they get to the pallet, there's not much that they can do about it to avoid getting hit. I also like his power because even though his portals aren't the best, he's probably one of the most balanced killers in the game. Has a pretty balanced win-to-loss ratio. It feels really good to win with him because you know that not every game is going to be a guaranteed win, like when you're playing like Nurse or Spirit or something. I also like him because he's probably one of the least played killers I see. Like I play at red rank like 99% of the time, and I don't think I see Demogorgons more than like once a month. So I like the idea of playing a killer that's kind of lesser known, a little more extinct than others, and that just brings me some joy. So that's why I'll put Demogorgon at the S tier. Next up is our boy Oni, and Oni for me is going to go in the B tier. Oni, I like the idea of Oni's playstyle being very similar to Pig's, where he has to play well at the start of the match, and then he'll progressively be rewarded throughout the match based on that early performance. As the Oni, you want to get early hits on survivors, so having detection perks really helps out a lot, which is what I do. I play with detection perks as Oni most of the time, like Whispers. I also, like I said, it's really cool to have like a superpower, kind of like Michael Myers, where your power like fluctuates based on how well your performance is. You get to use Blood Fury quite often if you manage to get lots of hits on survivors. And I like that like dopamine hit, I guess you could say, when you're playing as Oni and you get a Demon Dash hit on someone and instantly down them. I do think his power is probably like a copy of Billy's, so that's why I'm not going to put him at A tier. Like, I do enjoy him, but I would probably prefer Hillbilly most of the time in comparison, so that's why he'll be going to B tier. Alright, next up is Deathslinger. I'm going to put Deathslinger at the B tier. Deathslinger is actually a pretty fun killer for me to play, despite the fact that he's so irritating to play against. His power has very little counterplay, like he'll either shoot you or he won't, and it usually relies kind of on his ability to land shots rather than your own dodging potential. And I guess that's kind of what appeals to me about this killer. I like the idea that if you perform well, then you'll be rewarded, but it's not such a big reward that it's like the other team has zero chance. Now, it is kind of annoying when you play him because occasionally you'll see your harpoon go through a survivor and it'll not hit them, and that can be pretty frustrating. I also don't like the fact that he's rather slow. Like, if you miss a shot on a survivor, they'll gain so much distance on you, it can be pretty frustrating. So that's why he'll be going in B tier and not anything higher or lower. Alright, we only got 3 killers left, so let's just keep working our way through them. And I'm going to be putting Executioner at the S tier. The reason why I enjoy Executioner so much is because he has multiple ways to deal with the tactics that survivors will often have. His power pretty much allows him to completely ignore like second chance perks such as Unbreakable or Decisive Strike if you can get survivors tormented. And if you've seen my videos, you might be able to notice that I tend to be very hook hungry. I'm very aggressive when I play this game. I love like maximizing my score as much as possible. And the instances that get you the most points in this game is getting hook states. Now, Executioner's cages and his final judgment give the same like points as getting hook states, and as a result, being able to send people to cages and being able to send people to their doom at a very fast pace makes him like, once you step on that gas pedal as Executioner, like there's no stopping. You will become like an absolute killing machine. His Wave of Torment, or his Punishment of the Damned, I guess it's called, is super cool for trying to hit people through walls and pallets. It works similar to Demogorgon's Lunge, and I just love the guy. Like, his aesthetic is cool, his power is cool. Like, he just hits all the freaking high tier reasonings for me. So that's why I'm gonna put him in the S tier. All right, now we're moving up on to Blight, and I'm gonna put Blight in the A tier. I like the idea of being extremely mobile with killers, and even though like Demogorgon and Executioner don't have that, I still really enjoy having the ability to move quickly around the map without having like a Freddy teleport or something stupid like that. And Blight's power gives you movement speed that you will never find with any other killer, except maybe like Hillbilly. I also like that his ability isn't always the most, like you can't use it in every single chase. I like that you have to kind of understand the killer a decent bit. Like, you can't use his power at short loops, but you can use it at certain jungle gym pallets or even the shack pallet if you're good enough. I also like him because I like that he's a medium height killer, despite the fact that his POV is so low to the ground. It's so irritating. It's like 2 feet off the ground. I can't even see over most objects. And honestly, if they raised his POV a little bit higher, I'd probably put him in S tier. That's how much I enjoy playing him. So that's why he's going to go in the A tier for me. Alright, last killer, but probably definitely least compared to most of the other killers that the community tends to like, is Twins. Twins is going to go in the B tier for me. I like playing as a Twins because I like being able to switch between 2 different like entities of control. Like, if I want to play Charlotte and deal with pallet loops or break pallets, I can do that. Then I can switch to Victor and go and attack someone on a generator really far off. Like, the thing about this killer that's nice is that she has options. Now, you can choose to slug people for the whole game, and you can choose to hook camp people, but I try my best not to do that. It's usually better for both teams if you use your power to down people. And then like what I'll do is I'll play as Victor, I'll down someone that's been in the injured state and another in the dying state, and then I'll use Victor to attack someone that's healthy. Now that is like the most optimal use of his power, because while Victor's busy harassing that person that was healthy, you can go and pick up that first survivor, hook them, and then you'll have Victor back. So that's why I'm going to put her in the B tier. The reason she's not A tier or S tier to me is because it can be frustrating to play as her, because there's so many ways that survivors can screw you over. People can kidnap Victor, people can like disconnect, and like I said, I'm kind of blood point hungry, so when people disconnect, I don't get as many points, I don't get to pip, and that can be pretty frustrating. So she'll stay at B tier. Alright, so that's going to do it for this video. Thank you all for watching. I'd like to see what you guys think of my tier list here for killers I enjoy and don't enjoy playing, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next video of the series. Have a good one.